Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 19 of our Business Growth Action Plan Live. I'm happy to have you on with us today as we continue talking about how it is that we're going to be equipping ourselves with a completed action plan for 2026. Now, this week we've been talking a lot about execution, and today I want to focus on how do you see your meetings as a part of your execution rhythm or a part of your execution framework, or even just important in executing the goals that you have set. If you are new here, I am Michelle O'Connor, business growth strategist, and I help entrepreneurs to grow their business profitable with ease and reducing burnout and overwhelm. So let's jump into it. If you're new to our live, I say this, I've been saying this from maybe day two, that we're building on the previous work that we have done. So I would encourage you to watch the replays. We try to make them maybe 30 minutes max. There's some that's 10, 15, but we hardly ever go over 30 minutes just to ensure, because the aim of this is that I understood and I got from our various entrepreneurs that time was a challenge. And I wanted you to be able to get bite-sized things that you're able to implement on a daily basis and then come back the next day and build on it. So we've been talking a lot this week about execution, and today I want to focus on our meetings. No, we see the reels, we see the memes, we see all the fun stuff that happens when people are talking about meetings and talking about it from a standpoint of whether they're annoyed about being in a meeting or the meeting could have been an email. And I want to help you to not be on the receiving end of that. I want to help you to ensure that your team is not documenting your experience in a reel for any social media platform. So I reflected on, especially my time in corporate. I led execution, and that meant that I had to manage how we were implementing the initiatives across the group of companies that we had in three different countries: Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Dominican Republic. And while I may not have led all the meetings, I had to ensure that they were happening, and I had to support the CEOs, make sure they happen. But in leading our budgeting process, maybe 60% of my time was spent in meetings or leading and or designing what those meetings would look like. And I sat and reflected on that, and I want to share with you some of the things that I think are very, very important for you as you think about your execution. Now, one thing that I know I've gotten from persons as I've gone into consulting is, we're meeting all our targets, we don't need a meeting, we're doing very well. But that is where you're wrong. Your meeting is not just about, we're meeting the target, so let's go. There is so much more that you get from your team. There's so much more that you get in understanding why you're doing things and how you can change that. You won't get that if you're not having conversation with you won't get that if you're not having regular conversation with your team. And that's what we want to talk about. So why are meetings important? Some of the things that I thought about and I want to share with you when you think about your meetings. One, your meeting is not just about a gathering. It's where you come with things that are going to move your business forward. And I did say earlier, if you're missing your meeting and thinking to yourself, oh, you know what, our meetings or our targets are good. What happens is, when you don't have your meetings, everything now becomes urgent, or a lot of things become urgent, because in the meetings, you're able to have conversations that you're not having when you're just assigning a task, or you're just walking by and you're checking in. Are you good? Yes, we're good. And you keep it moving. Your meetings is where you have these conversations. However, the structure is important. So when you have your meetings, there are three things that I thought of that I want to share with you. One, you're asking, are we on track? Or are we off track? If you are, then you're able to go and have conversations now about how it is that you're going to make a change. How are you going to be improving? If you're not on track, why? You're talking about why and how can you make a change going forward. Sometimes when we have brilliant CEOs and founders like yourself, you want to solve it all on your own, and you have a gold mine in your team, but you get to tap into those persons and tap into their minds when you bring them in a room and you're having those kind of conversation. And then you get to talk about what are you going to be doing next. No, as a CEO, you want to have visibility over your targets. We spoke about dashboard, and I'm having this conversation now, because whenever we think about execution, yes, it's about the doing, but when you're tracking and monitoring, your meeting is a part of your monitoring process. Let me just say that, right? It's not just we're coming together. It's not just the dashboard. It's not just the reports that's being emailed to you, but your meeting is a part of your performance management framework. So you're checking to see if you're on target, you know where you are, you're able to spot risk, you're able to develop and design activities, how you're going to address those going forward. And when you have your meetings consistently at the same time, you're keeping up the momentum and you're indirectly building a habit with your team that you don't even know you're doing. Because if they know that we're meeting on the third Thursday to talk about our revenue, you best believe the reports are going to be ready. They're going to be on top of things. If they choose to do it every day, the day of the meeting, at some point in time, they are going to realize that this doesn't work. I need to be ahead of the game. Also, if you're holding them accountable in the meeting, they can't come to the meeting and say they didn't know. Like, why didn't you know? We agreed that we would have been meeting at this point in time. So that is how I want you to think about it. And I'm going to be walking you through a 4-step framework that you can use in designing your meetings to make sure that they're effective. Oftentimes when persons find that meetings are not effective is because they enter the meeting and they don't know why they're there, or they just start talking. Like for me, as a planner and as someone who's led these processes for over 10 years so often and gotten good results, when I step into a meeting and I immediately can tell that there's no outlined objective, there was no thinking, somebody just know we needed to meet and we're here. So the first thing I want you to do is be very clear on why you're having the meeting. What is this meeting for? So let's take an example. Earlier we spoke about we're trying to increase our sales. So therefore, a part of the monitoring process for your, ensuring that you're on target, you're going to be meeting with your sales agent, but you're also individually, sorry. So you're meeting with them one-on-one, but you're also having a team meeting. You're also checking, let's come together as a huddle. Let's talk about where we are, where we needed to be, and what are your plans for the next week. So this is now how we spoke earlier about your KPIs and your initiatives and your goals and your owners and your timelines. This is where it all comes into play as well. So you want to have a very clear objective. What decisions are we going to be making in this meeting and what updates are required? Ask those questions. And I must say, you need to have a leader for your meeting, someone who is willing to stick to the plan, because I guarantee you, no matter how structured the persons are who are in the room, there are going to be times when things go off tangent and you want someone who's going to pull it together. And when we're through talking about the 4-step framework, I'm going to be showing you an example of an agenda for a meeting that you can use as a guide, because I know the things that you're discussing might be different, but just something to use as a guide. So what decisions are we going to make? That's the first thing. You need to have an objective. Why are we meeting? And everybody knows why you're meeting. That way, they don't come thinking, oh, we're just gathering. No, you're coming with information. And it leads me to the second thing. You want to define your input. So if we're using the sales meeting as an example, we're having a sales meeting. The objective of this meeting is to get an update on or a status update on our performance as at this date. Or you can set maybe the week before. You're having your meetings on a Monday. So your sales, you're reviewing your sales performance versus target. If it's project, what's at risk, what's not at risk. If it's operational, what's our customer experience looking like? Those are some things that you want to discuss. So in order for you to have that information ready for the meeting, you now need to have some inputs, which is point number 2. Define your inputs. If you're going to be talking about your sales numbers, you want to have your reports ready. That now leads to another conversation. Where are we getting the information from? Who owns it is another thing that we can talk about, but I'll get to that point next. Where are we getting that information from, and do we have access to that information? Because so often we might say, okay, we're coming and we're going to be talking about our sales target, but where are we getting the numbers from? And that's an input. So you ensure that the persons know an input to this meeting is having your sales dashboard completed. I remember we normally have a weekly sales meeting, and one of the challenges that would happen when we were in that meeting is that our branch managers would not have their reports ready on time. No fault of theirs. This challenge now goes up to our operations team or our projects team to say, hey, we need a project to fix the issues that we're having with our reports, because that is an input into our sales meeting, and it's making our sales meeting inefficient and ineffective, because if persons are coming and they don't have the numbers, then it doesn't make any sense we meet, or we're not meeting and discussing things that are going to move the company forward. So ensure that you know what your inputs are. You may need to have updated dashboard when we're having board meetings. Your reports are due X date before the board meeting, and you're coming to the meeting prepared. You would have reviewed the information before, and you're coming to the meeting prepared. KPIs, your status updates, your financial snapshot, you name it. Think about any input that's needed for the meetings that you're having. Ensure that the owners for that know that this is going to be needed for your meeting, and they come prepared with the information. I could even go a step further to say, when you're having meetings and there are reports or information that's going to be shared for discussion purposes, you want to share those a few days before the meeting so you can have your service level agreement set. And your service level agreement is really, if we're having a meeting on the 4th of the month, we need to have the information by the last day of the previous month. Something like that, right? Set that up in your company, set that up in your business. Remember, we're thinking about our companies and how we can heighten execution, because we would have done the planning and now it's time to get things done. So I saw this quote. I should have written down who I got it from, but it said, if people arrive without inputs, the meetings becomes a conversation and not execution. So it's what they think, or I believe this is what we achieved, or I think this is where we're going to end the month. No, we're not having those conversations in 2026. We're being very focused. So your target was 100,000. You are now at 20. What caused us to be behind? What can we do to make up, or can we, or do we need to increase the targets for the next quarter? Those are the conversations we're having going into 2026. Okay. So the next thing is, so we would have covered 2. 1, you want to be very clear on your objectives. 2, you want to know what inputs you need for the meeting. And the third one we kind of touched on is you want to have owners and persons who are responsible. And when I thought of this point, I remember we use a matrix, and I probably will do a video on that, and it's called RACI, which is a project management framework, I would call it. It's where, and RACI stands for persons who are responsible. The A is for accountable. The C is for communicate or consulted, and I is for informed. Why is this important right here? It's important because not everybody needs to be in the meeting. Not everybody needs to own something for the meeting. And sometimes when we have owners, we have 3, 4 names. No. You want to first start with a role. What's the role? What's the role that's responsible for this? And then you add a name to it. And I say start with a role because your organization could change. And when you go by role, you really get to see whether or not it flows. So let me give you an example. Sorry, you might be thinking of, let's use reports as an example, and you put Michelle there as a person responsible for this information, but Michelle works in marketing. But the reason you have Michelle's name is because Michelle is good at reporting. That's not the role that's responsible for it. So when you put the role, yes, you may have somebody in your team who has a specified skill that you want to use and fill in the gap. But what if that person leaves? You're documenting your processes for continuity as such. Start with the role and then the person who is responsible. So I'm going to do a live on RACI separate from this. So for the roles, the owners and persons who are responsible, you're thinking about who is going to be leading the meeting. I said earlier, have somebody who is leading, who is willing to say to someone, oh, that is not for this meeting. We have a separate meeting for that. Let's table it and send it to the owner, the lead for that meeting. So you want somebody who is leading. When person's coming, you know who is calling the meeting to order. Those things are important. That causes confusion and waste of time. Who brings the data? So we spoke about the inputs earlier. Who is the person who is carrying the information that you need, that you're going to be discussing at this meeting? Who updates the dashboard? So the person who is updating the dashboard might be the person who is might be a different person from the one who's reporting on the numbers. You may have a team of people who updates the information. And as a CEO and founder, you need to know these things, because this is what now reduces the confusion in your team and also heightens your performance, right? Who is recording the decision and the action items? That is a pet peeve of mine. We sit in meetings and we're throwing out all these wonderful ideas. They are great ideas. And we're saying, yes, we're going to be doing it. But who? Who is the we? Who is the we? And have we all agreed that this is an action item? So you need someone who is documenting the action items. That way, that person can now say, okay, we agreed that we're doing this particular thing, but I don't know who is doing it and the timeline, right? So you need to have that. So you're not, remember, we're talking about you're not wasting your time. Because if you're sitting and just having conversation and throwing out great ideas and there's no ownership, then that's where you have an issue. Do we have any questions? Any questions so far? Okay, let me know as we go through if you have any questions. And also, as a reminder, if you would like to book a conversation with me, my calendar link is in the comment field. You can go ahead and book a call, or I am leaving my email address as well. So again, you want to ensure that you have the owners who is recording the decision and the action item, and who communicates a follow-up. This is critical. I have had experiences where we have an agenda for a meeting. We're looking at the action items, but guess what? The owner for that action item may not have been in the meeting, so they don't know. And you come to this meeting and this thing keeps repeating and it keeps repeating and it keeps repeating because nobody communicates. And these are some things that I think we miss that are very, very important in ensuring that you're running and operating your meetings. So it's monitoring your performance, right? So you want to remember, if everybody owns it, then nobody owns it. It's not going to get done. So that's point number 3. 4 is the frequency. What's your reporting cadence? Like, how often are you going to be meeting? So if we're doing weekly meetings, are we doing bi-weekly meetings? Are we doing monthly meetings? You want to be clear on that, because you can see how it feeds up to the other things that we're doing. The person who is reporting, updating the dashboard, the person who is providing the reports, because people have other things doing. And this is where the confusion comes in and the overwhelm when it comes down to meetings, because persons sometimes feel as though there's just so much, and my manager don't understand that I have all these other things doing. I can't spend my whole day in meeting. Sometimes the full process is not thought out. And the person who is providing the information also have other deliverables and may also have other accountabilities that they're focusing on. So you want to make sure that that is consistent and also sustainable as it builds discipline. Now, as you go into thinking about the initiatives that you have documented, you want to think of, how am I, as a CEO, how am I going to stay on top of things? How am I going to be monitoring? How am I going to ensure that these things are done? You want to start with your numbers. Numbers never lie, they tell a story. So you're monitoring your numbers on a frequent basis. Think about what that frequency looks like. We just spoke about it. Am I monitoring this particular? Maybe your revenue numbers is something you can do on a weekly basis, but there are other numbers that needs bi-weekly or monthly or even quarterly when you think of like your customer service scores, that kind of thing, right? Stay on track of that and follow a tight agenda. You have things to do. There are times when you're brainstorming, that's completely different. You set time apart for that, but follow an agenda. And also ensure that you're redirecting off topic questions. I said that earlier. The person who's leading the meeting needs to be strong enough to raise their hand and say, listen, this is not for this meeting, or we will table this for the next meeting so we can get through the agenda items. And maybe most of us know that we normally have this thing called AOB, any other business. So you put it there, and then if you have the time, you can discuss it. That way, you don't leave the meeting and have persons feeling, I've wasted my time. Like, why were we there? And sometimes you also can be flexible, because one agenda item may take the time up, but it was needed. Like, we needed to have this conversation in order to move on. You're open to that as well. It's not like, oh yeah, we need to talk about that, but that's not important. The person who is leading needs to be at the level where they understand where the organization is going, they understand the need for these discussions, and they're helping you to frame it that way. So I'm going to just show you quickly just an example of an agenda. Have an agenda when you're going into your meeting, guys. These are the things that, for me, persons say they're overwhelmed, but you go into a meeting and you don't have an agenda. You don't know what you're focusing on. You don't know why are we here. We're just sitting here because somebody said we needed to meet each week. That's a complete waste of time, to be honest. So this is, we've been talking about weekly sales meetings. So I just wanted to share this with you. So you have your objectives stated. We're going to be monitoring sales performance and progress toward our revenue target. That is what we're talking about in the meeting. So nobody's coming to the meeting to talk about uniforms. Nobody's coming to the meeting to talk about lunch subsidy. We're not really there today. Maybe at the end of the meeting or at another one, right? Send that to the HR department. Some of the inputs that you need your weekly sales numbers. You need to know how many leads were generated. You want to know the status of your pipeline, what's moving off, what's expected to come in. Follow-up status. Have you called the warm leads that you have for the clients who are going to be rolling off? Is there anything else that we can offer to them? And any other conversations that you might be happening. When you frame it like this and you're asking these direct questions, you find that person stay outside of story. We're not here to understand why the client never came, why they didn't answer the phone. No, just give us the numbers, right? Who is the owner, your sales lead, or the CEO? And this is just an agenda. You're welcome. You have other company activities that you do. And this can be whether you're reading from your values or you're reading your vision or your mission statement, anything that you do, you pray before your meeting, those things, you can choose what goes where. You want to look at your previous action items, any updates from that, and the person who is documenting, responsible for documentation in the meeting, they would have noted what the action items were, and they would have also noted who owns it, and you just point to that person for the update. The next thing, we go to the main agenda item, which is the status of your performance, reviewing your dashboard, what's on and off target, what are we going to be doing to solve the issues that we're having if we're off target, and for the targets where we're on, do we expect to remain in this trajectory? Identify any risk, and you recap your action items, timelines, and owners. This is important. A lot of conversations take place in meetings, or I should say, a lot of side conversations take place in meetings, and you discuss so many things that people sometimes don't even realize that their name was called for something. So you want to recap the action items that you agreed on, and you want to confirm who owns it and the timeline. So the person can note it and be like, oh no, I'm going to be on vacation during that time. Unfortunately, I won't be here. Or fortunately, I don't think anybody says, unfortunately, I'm going to be on vacation. Or based on my other deliverables, that's not a good time. Or we're having auditing. Or it's end of month, so we have a lot of accounting to do. You know, we normally have clients that we're following up with. You name it. Persons are able to give their input, but recap the action items. Don't leave the meeting thinking, yes, this is done. Because what's going to happen? You're going to come to the next meeting and it's not going to be done. And you're going to be like, but you were sitting right here. People aren't 100% plugged into meetings, regardless of what you think. I guarantee you, I've led hundreds of meetings with top executives, brilliant people being paid a lot of money to be sitting in those rooms. and they don't pay attention 100% of the time. So as lead for the meeting, you recap the action items, you recap the owners, and then you talk about your next steps. So I feel like that was a mouthful, but I really do hope that you found some value in the information, because your meetings are a part of your execution process. So I don't want you to just see it as, I'm just having a meeting, or we need to have a sales meeting, or we need to have a meeting as a team. That's what they say. No, think about the 4 things that we spoke of, why you're having the meeting, the objective. Ensure you are very clear on the inputs that's needed for the meeting. You also need to be clear on who owns it, who is the owner for this meeting, and the frequency, because you don't want persons to be caught by surprise, and you want them to be thinking about all the things that they have to do. When we talk about execution is not just getting the thing done, but getting it done in a way that's effective and creates that atmosphere in your organization where persons don't feel everything is urgent and they're constantly running and trying to get things done. No, they have thought things through and they know what they need to do and when they need to do it. So that's what I want to leave you with. And for the next steps, look at your initiatives. You would have prioritized yesterday. If you didn't watch yesterday's live, go and watch it. You prioritized yesterday. Now I want you to start thinking of, how are you going to be monitoring? How are you going to be staying on top of things? How are you going to be made aware of the status? What's risk, what's at risk, what's on target, what's off target? Those are the things that we want to be aware of, because you're showing up like the CEO and you want to have things in control. And even if you're not there, at least because you develop this rhythm in your company where reporting and status update is necessary and it's a part of what you do, then even if you're on vacation and you're on the beach, you could take your phone up and you could say, okay, I'm going to check to see, let me look at the performance dashboard, because you would have developed a rhythm and they would have done it whether or not you're there or if you're having a meeting. So I hope this helps. See you again tomorrow. Any questions before we go? Any questions? Okay. So what we will do tomorrow, we will conclude on execution. And then next week, now we go into performance management and we'll just continue from there. But thank you so much for coming on. And again, if you need to make contact with me, I am Michelle O'Connor, business growth strategist, and I help entrepreneur women who are over 40 to grow their business profitably with ease, less burnout and less overwhelm, more structure. That's what we're aiming for. Have a great day and thanks again for coming on. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.